Michael Lowry begins his evidence to the Tribunal, the Taoiseach open to widening its scope. Mo Molan continues to try to resolve the parades crisis. Loyalist paramilitaries threaten the south. 6 men found guilty of an IRA bomb plot jailed for a total of 210 years. The economy shows its strongest ever financial surplus after another tax surge. Good evening and welcome. The former Fine Gael Minister Michael Lowry has been giving evidence to the Payments to Politicians Tribunal set up after revelations about his business relationship with Ben Dunne. Earlier, the Tribunal was told of alleged representations Mr Lowry had made. One involved a prosecution against a branch of Dunne's stores under food regulations. The other was an approach Mr Lowry made to a Fine Gael TD asking him to drop his opposition to a proposed shopping centre where Dunne's stores was to be the anchor tenant.
Michael Lowry, whose business relationship with Ben Dunne led to the establishment of this tribunal, arrived at Dublin Castle this morning to begin his testimony. But first, some new evidence relating to Mr Lowry was presented. A Dunne Stores executive, Bernard Walsh, told the tribunal that he approached Mr Lowry while he was a minister for advice about the prosecution of a Dunne Stores branch under food regulations. He said he made the approach because Mr Lowry was a personal friend and not because of his business relationship with the company. Michael Miley, former programme manager at the Department of Agriculture, said that Mr Lowry mentioned the matter to him in passing and not as a matter of urgency. The tribunal then heard evidence about the Harbour Place shopping centre in Mullingar, which opened 2 weeks ago with Dunne Stores as an anchor tenant. Fine Gael TD Paul McGrath told the tribunal that as a member of Westmeath County Council he had opposed the granting of tax exemption status to the site. He said that Mr Lowry approached him in March or April of 1994 in Leinster House and said that as a prominent member of the Fine Gael front bench his opposition to the site was sending out the wrong message to Ben Dunne, who was a major contributor to party funds. Mr McGrath said he told Mr Lowry to F off, saying that he had to look after his own home base. He told the tribunal he felt it was improper that he should be asked to change his stance just because of the views of a contributor to the party. But Michael Lowry's counsel, Donal O'Donnell, made it clear that his client would be vigorously disputing this version of events. Fine Gael TD Phil Hogan gave evidence that he was approached by the developer of the site, who was upset at the opposition of the Fine Gael councillors in Westmeath. Mr Hogan said he put him on to Michael Lowry, who was then the party chairman and could deal with the matter. He said he was not aware of the Dunne Stores' involvement in the project when he suggested the developer contact Mr Lowry. Donal O'Donnell, Michael Lowry's counsel, then cross-examined Mr McGrath about representations he had made himself. Mr McGrath agreed that he had made representations on behalf of his brother, who had applied for the job of sub-postmaster in Athlone. Ben Dunne also gave evidence again today. He said he hadn't suggested to Michael Lowry that he should intervene on the Mullingar development and agreed that Mr Lowry would not have done so without discussing the matter with him first. Mr Lowry himself began his evidence to the tribunal this afternoon, giving a brief outline of the start of his career as a refrigeration engineer and his first contacts with Ben Dunne. His evidence will continue tomorrow.
Tonight, a spokesman has confirmed that the government has been in contact with the Tribunal through the Attorney-General's office. The indications are that it may not be necessary to widen the Tribunal's terms of reference because Mr Haughey is believed to be the only politician to have benefited from the funds in the Ansbacher deposit. Earlier, the Taoiseach said that if it were necessary, the government would be prepared to broaden its remit if it uncovered extra information that was in the public interest. Next week, the opposition parties will ask the Dáil to broaden the Tribunal's investigative powers.
The revelation that the Cayman Islands bank account through which former Taoiseach Charles Haughey received £1.3 million contained further monies totalling up to £40 million has led to calls from the opposition to have the scope of the McCracken Tribunal widened. They say that currently the tribunal is confined to investigating payments made by the Dunne Stores Group and cannot examine whether the remaining funds within the account have any connection with Irish politicians. Fine Gael and Labour, with the support of Democratic Left, will table motions in the Dáil next week calling for the tribunal to be given extra powers.
The information that has now come out about this bank account with 30 to 40 million pounds in it, we are anxious to allow the tribunal to look behind that insofar as there might have been payments to politicians that might have had an effect on their job.
She called on the government to support the opposition's motion. However, speaking outside government buildings this morning, Taoiseach Bertie Ahern said he would not interfere with the tribunal, which he said was carrying out excellent work. But, he added, he would be amenable to recommendations from the tribunal should new information come to light.
If they believe that there was some appropriate extension that they required, I would certainly be interested in talking to them about it. But I would do nothing that would affect or try to redirect or delay the excellent work that has been done by the chairman of the tribunal.
But what about the issue of public disclosure? Surely the public has a right to know this information?
Well, you know, there's a tribunal there and a chairman of the tribunal, and I would say nothing other than if they believe there is some extension that would usually be required, I would certainly be amenable to that.
The Dáil adjourns for the summer recess on the 10th of July, and opposition parties are adamant that the terms of reference of the tribunal be sorted out at that point. However, should the Oireachtas decide to extend the tribunal's remit, it still remains to be seen whether a summer of further dramatic revelations lies ahead.
A High Court judge is to travel to Moscow to take evidence in connection with a forthcoming libel action by former Social Welfare Minister Princess de Russa against the Sunday Independent. The case was due to start tomorrow before Mr Justice Carney and a jury, but an application was made by independent newspapers for the judge to travel to Moscow.